have been portrayed as mindless man-eaters that drive fear into the hearts of people. And I'm on a mission to allay my fears and conquer my demons. After several days, I realized that sharks may just have another side to them. I'm Ashley Dowds, and this is my Africa, my home. I dig deep into the past to make sense of the present. I explore the natural environment to find the driving force behind my continent's attraction. But it hides another face, an elusive side filled with excitement and packed with adventure. A 170 years ago, Britain declared the moderate northeastern coast of southern Africa a colony. A new town, Durban, is born out of the dune forests. By the early 20th century, it expands to the north and south coast and becomes a holiday haven for thousands of South Africans. Tourists flock to its beaches, and the KwaZulu-Natal coastline became hugely popular. Then, in 1905, a deadly attack on a swimmer marred its reputation as an exclusive resort and threatened a booming tourism industry. The word shark was on everybody's lips. In less than a year, 2 other people lost their lives. And fueled by the media hype, the Natal coast found itself with the reputation of being the place for shark attacks in South Africa. The summer of 1957-1958 raises hell as the Natal South Coast beaches turn red. The tabloids call it Black December, when 9 attacks in quick succession results in 6 casualties. Scottburgh, a small town to the south with its attractive beaches, earned a reputation as a shark attack hotspot. But the warm Indian Ocean still tempts me. Ocean temperatures rarely go below 19 degrees Celsius. On average, they're about 26 degrees. We're not the only ones that love these conditions. Many shark species do too. The thing is, people swim in splash. Sharks pick up the movements that are similar to the struggles of an injured fish and zoom in on it. The outcome, often a tragic loss of life. Conflict was inevitable, and several species of shark, some recognized to attack bathers, were labeled with that fearsome reputation of man-eaters. Dive instructor Joe Besadenhout has been trying to get closer to sharks for many years, and he searches for silent scuba that doesn't scare away fish.
Oh, for this thing is $400.
He finds an alternative, rebreather scuba, that recycles the air that a diver breathes. Carbon dioxide is constantly removed and small amounts of oxygen are added. The noisy bubbles that are exhaled from the older scuba system are absent.
Because you are quiet, you are not making noises or bubbles, or that sort of thing. So all the species, from the smallest little goldfish to the biggest sharks, look at you as something that's supposed to be there.
But before Joe takes his big step into testing different scuba systems, he wants to determine why shark attacks have declined immensely over the past few decades. He knocks on the door of the KwaZulu-Natal Sharks Board, founded in 1962. Its mandate to protect bathers from attacks, and they use shark nets on 38 beaches. Debbie Hargreaves, who's been with the KwaZulu-Natal Sharks Board for decades, explains how the system works.
The nets run in 2 parallel lines. So what we're seeing at the moment, the red float, just at the peak of the wave there, that'll be the outer net. And what Dylan's working on now is the inside net.
Okay, so the net's actually, isn't a solid straight line?
Oh, no.
Okay.
We set in 2 parallel lines, so catching sharks is incidental.
The perception of sharks as indiscriminate killers changed, and so has the understanding of the role that they play in the marine environment. Each species has a specific niche that they fill in the environment, and killing them will result in imbalances. The first warning signs appeared on the Namibian coastline some years ago, where the carcasses of dead seals became a common sight. Environmental experts agree that this is a direct result of overpopulated seal colonies and not enough food to sustain them. Black-backed jackals have a feast, and their numbers skyrocketed as dead and dying seals provide a constant source of food. Scavengers such as seagulls and crows also have a gory feast. Great white sharks love to eat Cape fur seals, and when the population of these sharks withered due to overfishing, Cape fur seal numbers exploded, and they consume masses of fish that many other species also rely on. There is now hardly enough food for cormorants and jackass penguins to survive. Many of these birds succumb to hunger, dying a slow death. The fascination with sharks changed over the years, from fearsome hatred to appreciation. Shark nets became less of an ideal situation. In fact, they're quite contentious because they're not very selective in what gets tangled up in them. And the KwaZulu-Natal Sharks Board started researching alternative anti-shark measures several years ago.
We've been working on an electromagnetic barrier for quite some period of time.
And this system is currently tested in False Bay in the Western Cape, where shark attacks have claimed several lives over the past few years.
We got to the stage where we know that the cable works, it repels sharks.
Sharks have been labelled as deadly, mindless killers for so long that people are often terrified of them. It's time to call on the experts for some help. Norwegian dive master and instructor Vegard Kvam, who is now living on the KwaZulu-Natal south coast town of Umkomaas, is well respected in scuba diving circles.
Hey,
Hi,
Vegard.
how are you?
Very well. You're the guy who's crazy about sharks, yeah?
Yeah.
Or crazy enough to take me.
Vegard is also one of the pioneers that introduced people to diving with sharks in their natural environment on this stretch of coastline.
When we started out, it was people were literally flying out of the water because there was a shark, and this is now what you would perceive as the shark experts in the area.
With the assistance of several shark scientists from all over the world, Vegard and his team fine-tuned their shark diving adventures.
We can safely do it here because of experience and the procedures that's been developed locally.
While trying to determine the effect of silent diving on the behavior of sharks, Joe visits Ushaka, one of the top aquariums in South Africa, which is situated in Durban, in KwaZulu-Natal.
Hi, Matt.
Yes, hi Joe.
Yes.
Nice to meet you. Would you like to come see what we do here?
I would love to.
Please come with me.
Ushaka is one of the very few places where open ocean sharks are kept successfully. These fish often die when they're confined to marine tanks, but some of the raggies or sand tigers have been here for years.
So we've got a large variety of animals in this aquarium, over about 300 species, ranging in some small seahorses and pipefish to these amazing sharks that you see here. I just think sharks are a very iconic species when it comes to an aquarium, and obviously, you know, people seem to think that these sharks are these fearsome predators, you know, that are dangerous to people and that. And just to come and see them swimming around peacefully and gracefully, should I say, in our tanks, you know, I think it changes that whole perspective on what people actually think of these animals. We bus in quite a few schools, underprivileged schools from the rural areas especially, you know, guys that don't get to see the sea very often in their lives, and you know, what a wonderful opportunity for them to come down here and see these animals up close. Stats-wise, about 96% of people in South Africa won't get the opportunity to actually dive, and this does offer an alternative, you know, to get nice and close to these animals, because you know, what better way to appreciate an animal to actually see it up close for yourself. Joe, what we've done here is we've organised a little treat for you. Okay. We're going to get in the cage here and do a little bit of snorkeling with our sharks and see how close we can get up to them.
Scuba gear is extremely noisy, and the density of water helps sound to travel much better underwater than above. Joe hopes to determine whether diving only with a snorkel will make a difference in their behaviour. They stay in a cage, as in 1984, a diver was attacked by a shark in a tank. I've got to say, though, that my own experience of scuba diving with raggies in a tank at the Two Oceans Aquarium, Cape Town, I felt very unthreatened. I suppose being in the water with only snorkels may potentially change the behavior of sharks. Their presence doesn't seem to make much of a difference. In fact, Joe and Matt's little adventure turns out to be totally uneventful with oceanic whitetips, a much feared shark in other parts of the world, totally ignoring them. The raggies or sand tigers show even less interest, and hammerhead sharks just go on with their own business. A brindle bass, on the other hand, makes a real nuisance of itself as it shows an immense amount of interest in both men. They're extremely curious and inquisitive creatures, and they're big. They can grow to more than twice the length of a tall person and often tip the scale well over 250 kilograms. My own interest lies further south of Durban, at a small town that has seen very little in terms of shark incidents. Over the past 80 years, only 4 attacks on people occurred here, and this is presumably because this is not a very attractive swimming beach.
The small town of Umkomaas lies on the KwaZulu-Natal coastline, quite near the mouth of the Umkomaas River. It looks like a bit of a trickle now, and that's because of water extraction that's taking place upriver. It used to be vast. I mean, the place name, Umkomaas, means place of she-whales. Cows used to come in here in the river mouth with their calves. That's a distant memory.
Even further back in time, the rise and fall of sea levels has created a feature that draws thousands of people to these shark-infested waters every year. The Pleistocene epoch marked a period of repeated glaciation and was associated with much lower sea levels. 80,000 years ago, the area off the south coast of KwaZulu-Natal consisted of a bed of sand dunes. Heavy rainfalls caused sand and shell to dissolve, forming a compound of calcium carbonate, which in time became dune rock. 11,700 years ago, when the Pleistocene period came to an end and sea levels rose, this dune rock, along with the KwaZulu-Natal south coast, was submerged underwater. This formed a reef system, and one of the better known is Alawool Shoal, 5 kilometers straight out to sea, east of the town Umkomaas.
Safety first, so keep an eye everywhere. In the sense that be globally aware.
Alawool Shoal is on the inner edge of the Mozambican current, and the visibility is often excellent.
Below it, inside, what? Go!
In the 1950s, the first diver descended on Alawool Shoal, and dive operators explored it extensively in the 1980s for commercial purposes, in the midst of a worldwide scuba diving boom. Alawool Shoal showed immense potential, with healthy algae and soft corals that attract an array of marine species. Although the warmer Indian Ocean waters lack the biomass of the colder Atlantic Ocean, the reef is alive with colorful fish. Sea goldies have been known to change their sex when the ratio between males and females becomes skewed. Parrot fish are some of the few reef dwellers that feed directly on corals, while bright blue cleaner wrasse deliver a service to other fish by ridding them of parasites. The Alawool Reef that was once a sand dune is now full of gullies and holes. A massive underwater cave is formed and has become world famous for its fierce-looking visitors. This is where we explore Raggy Cave, domain of migrating raggies, also known as sand tigers or grey nurse sharks in other parts of the world. Vegard has gathered a group of rebreather enthusiasts that would help Joe to test the theory that silent scuba systems will allow them to get closer to exquisite species such as bull and hammerhead sharks. Their testing grounds, a deep reef, Protea Banks, that has earned the reputation of being a very taxing, dangerous dive. Depth varies from 27 meters to 40 meters, and the group hopes to get real close to sharks. But Protea Banks has a mind of its own. Strong currents play havoc with the bulky rebreather scuba systems, and it becomes hard work not to be washed off the reef out into the open ocean. A lonely ragged-toothed shark flees frantically before the divers could get close to it, and the bull and hammerhead sharks offer only a few glimpses before they disappear into the blue depths. These sharks are usually quite relaxed with divers in the water, but on this day their behavior is strange, somewhat unexpected. With too many factors playing a role and not enough information available, the effectiveness of rebreather systems to allow divers getting close to exquisite fish remains unknown. Our group is using the older open-circuit scuba gear, and we're on our way to Raggy Cave, where the sand tigers or grey nurse sharks hang out. A well-camouflaged fish turns out to be a highly venomous scorpion fish that fears no predator, including man. But what also amazes is the fact that few other fish seem to worry about the presence of the 2-meter-plus ragged-toothed sharks that lurk in the shade of the overhangs. The gathering of this clan was first noted when pioneering divers explored Alawool Shoal during the 1980s. They discovered that the sharks were only present at certain times, and further studies showed that they congregated here from June to November. The question was, why do they gather at this fairly shallow depth? These sharks are typically found in deeper coastal waters from between 60 and 190 meters deep. Ragged-toothed sharks have been known to shelter in caves or gutters during the day and come out at night. But the raggies or sand tigers of Alawool Shoal don't even hunt at night. But then marine biologists cracked the raggy code. They found that these fish gather on Alawool Shoal to mate, but we just caught the tail end of the breeding season. Even though they're harmless during this time with no attacks documented on divers to date, they have an imposing appearance, with a ferocious set of teeth that demand respect. Most sharks need to swim constantly for two reasons. Firstly, sharks lack the swim bladder that most fish use to adjust their buoyancy. Swimming creates lift similar to the wings of an aeroplane and prevents the shark from sinking. The second reason is that very few sharks have the ability to breathe, as they can't pump water over their gills. Once they stop swimming, the oxygen water flow stops and they drown. The ragged-toothed sharks have overcome both these obstacles. They gulp air from the surface, and this helps them to maintain buoyancy. This is the reason why these fearsome-looking creatures drift menacingly and seemingly weightless just above the ocean floor. Ragged-toothed sharks have also developed a way to circulate oxygen-rich water over their gills without swimming, as they're able to pass water through their respiratory systems by a pumping motion of their pharynx. What I find absolutely astonishing is how quickly the fear of sharks, however slight it might be, turns into admiration the more time I spend with them in their own domain. You know, the one thing that struck me when we got into the water was the temperature. It's so warm. It's almost like you don't need a wetsuit.
Yes. No, it is. It's summer temperatures here, 25, 26 degrees. It's like a bath. Gives the biodiversity, it explodes. 1,400 different species because of it.
Close contact with the raggies of Alawool Shoal doesn't fully prepare one for another adventure that Vegard and his team have perfected over time.
This goes against the grain because we're pulling in the sharks. Usually in the movies you see the sharks coming and everyone switches on the motors and they're out of there. Well, we're going to jump in with them. And according to the mad Norwegian at the back here, the splash is going to attract them because they think it's food. Splash equals food, which we're going to become. But we've got to flip over so we can see them eating us. Is that what you said? Social climbing, basically, yeah.
All right. Yeah. So that's what you want.
Baited dives are viewed as a safe way to get close to blacktip reef sharks. But, as Vegard explains, they are wild animals that need to be respected. An extended arm can be mistaken for food, and the group needs to stay together.
The whole motion that you'll be going through will be scanning this baby S.
By sticking together, divers become a single unit that intimidates the darting blacktip reef sharks. The fact that we're way off the bottom and suspended weightlessly at a depth of 8 meters places the group in a vulnerable position, and it is nerve-wracking because hanging around these predators really goes against the primal fear that we all have. The bait is kept in a stainless steel drum away from the sharks, and the frustration of not being able to reach them drives them a little bit crazy. And yet they don't cross the invisible line that defines the border of their personal space. Remoras, or suckerfish that often accompany sharks, have now moved in. They have sucking pads on the top of their heads, with which they attach themselves to sharks. These remoras are master opportunists that thrive on scraps of food when the sharks feed. With time, respect and awe replaces unease. The realization that one has moved on, way beyond the ancient fear that people harbor for these master predators, is not something that hits you immediately. They're not mindless man-eaters, but highly advanced, sophisticated predators with hundreds of species that have evolved over millions of years. At a small coastal town, a woman has befriended a much-feared shark species, one that has caused near-fatal injuries to numerous anglers.
Standing at the harbour entrance at Strays Bay, I've been going to feed something that's quite curious. It's a different creature. It's a stingray, and someone has been feeding him for a long time now. Sonia, and I've been armed with a piece of bait, and I'm going to try my hand at it. His name's Parry, I believe.
Look here.
That's eyes.
He's gonna bring you. Oh, nice. Nice, that's it. But I love them. They're like kids for me. Love them.
You come here every day, Sonia?
Sometimes every day, yes.
Although this is not a case of mutual love between Sonia and the stingrays, but rather habituation spurred by the promise of food, this relationship proves that even potentially deadly rays don't deserve the fearsome reputation that they've been labelled with. Nevertheless,
The word shark still sends a jolt of fear and panic into most of us. It's a deep-seated primeval fear. It's ingrained into our ancient sense of survival. The outline of a shark underwater probably does for us what the outline of a hawk does for a chicken.
technology has opened a minute part of the marine environment to audacious tourists. And as we're able to dig deeper, we understand better. Sharks, that nearly collapsed a thriving tourism industry in South Africa, are now one of the major attractions for adventurers from all over the world.
The idea of diving with sharks, although it was something that you want to put out of your mind, you think you're crazy when you're actually doing it. You jump in, and when you see those guys circling around you, there's something that changes. It's a calm, there's a peace. And I think maybe it's a peace that I felt also with the cave at the reef, looking at the ragged-teeth sharks and the parrot fish on the other side. My happy place is in two different, it's going to be split in two different places. It was watching the grace of those sharks and with watching the parrotfish and the light coming through that cathedral.